Okay, hello everyone. I'm just trying to get my PowerPoint working. Okay. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Some problems? Okay. I hope you can hear me, by the way. Can someone reply and say you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly.
Okay, great. Okay. So actually, my presentation is on the role of forests in post-COVID-19 recovery, and also detailing some of GDGI's response and actions. So first of all, I'd like to say hello to everyone, to colleagues in Seoul and also colleagues in Addis Ababa. So I'm now especially Professor Fakado Bayana, the Commissioner of the EFCC, and Mr. Dong-Ho Kim, the Country Director of KOICA, and to Professor Chong for organizing this workshop. My name's Chris Dickinson, and I spent 2 years working for UNDP in Ethiopia for the Commission, looking at sustainable landscapes for the Forest Sector Transformation Unit. I'm now working as the head of Global Sustainable Landscapes for GDGI based in Seoul. So first of all, my presentation is going to be talking a little bit about what GDGI does, also about forests and its role in green recovery, and some regarding GDGI's response. So obviously, when we talk about trees and forests, we're talking about, and also green recovery, we're talking about children's future. And forests take a long time to grow and to restore, but they can be cut and damaged overnight. So it's quite a difficult, complicated strategic issue, but luckily Ethiopia is leading in Africa at forest management and forest restoration. And we're also thankful to the support from KOICA for the 2 projects that will come in 2021 and 2022. So we must remember that this time next year, we hope that the COVID issue will have been tackled, but we also have to bear in mind the climate change problem and biodiversity extinction. These are 2 big problems that are still be with us and need to be tackled as well. And the green recovery from COVID can hopefully help address some of these problems and issues. So first of all, GDGI, as the Director General Frank Rijablan mentioned, GDGI is an intergovernmental agency. We work to help the member countries, which are now about 37 countries, to transform their economies to a green growth economic model. We work as trusted advisors with the government. Usually we are based in the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Climate Change in various different countries, especially in East Africa. We're working in the Forestry Environment Ministry in Uganda, Ethiopia, and Rwanda. And the vision is to develop a low carbon resilient world with strong and sustainable growth. This is similar sort of vision to Ethiopia's CRGE strategy. This is a map that shows some of the countries that we're working in. We have big programs in Indonesia, Colombia, Ecuador, Ethiopia, and India, for example. So we're quite spread out over a number of different countries in Africa and also Latin America and Asia and the Pacific Islands. So talking about forests and COVID-19. Well, as we have seen, over the last 10 years, we've seen a rise in number of infectious diseases, and 3/4 of these diseases are related to animals, so known as zoonotic diseases. So 3/4 of these often related to forest or animals. We can remember Ebola in the Congo and Uganda. There's things like SARS, swine flu, Nile fever. A lot of these are related to animals. And the causes are, one is related to the unsustainable food production, the more intensification of livestock, And I was reading an article today about pig production around the world and how this can also possibly result in also like a flu type virus that can be transmitted to humans. So we need to also make sure the food production is safe and clean. Also related to the more interaction between humans and wildlife, especially as forests are destroyed or degraded for agriculture or for logging, and also, of course, for the wildlife trade and consumption. So this is obviously very big in other countries, especially in Asia, but also in Africa as well. So these are some of the causes of zoonotic diseases. And healthy forests reduce the risk of disease. There was a paper recently published in 2020, and this was looking at the benefits of forests, healthy forests, to prevent a future COVID outbreak. So they estimated the world damage from COVID-19 is between $8 and $15 trillion. And I think it's probably increasing the estimates as time goes on. But they did estimate that to stop this and prevent this, it would cost about $22 billion per year. And this could be spent on reducing deforestation, stopping the wildlife trade, enforcing the wildlife trade, and other factors. And if you were to spend $20 billion on forest sector, as you know, as many people in this audience are from forestry, you have many benefits of protecting forests, from protecting water services, creating jobs, reducing carbon, stabilizing soils. And in Ethiopia, we see billions of dollars of lost soil value through rainfall and unsustainable land practices. And the Koika project will come and try and look at models for reducing this in an area in the future. So the amount of money spent on forest conservation, protection, and reducing deforestation actually is fairly small compared to the huge damage that's been done to the world economy. Absolutely the biggest impact in the world ever, probably, yeah, because it's totally global. Forests also are important as a safety net in times of crisis. So when there's a crisis like climate change or lack of water or COVID, the forests provide food or income for 20% of the global population. So forests are often the place that people in poverty turn to when there is a crisis, but also an opportunity. So for example, we have bamboo. Ethiopia has the largest bamboo area in Africa, over 1 million hectares. So a huge economic resource for potential for livelihoods and jobs. As Mr. Dong Ho Kim mentioned, it has coffee, which is very good for growing under the canopy, and also products like honey. Ethiopia is one of the biggest producers of honey in Africa. But with the problems of COVID, it's going to impact the poorest the most, and over 160 million people could face extreme poverty in 2020 and 2021. That's a report by one of the UN agencies. So forests are important also for creating jobs. So every dollar used for forest restoration can result in between $7 and $30 in benefits. As I mentioned, the soil conservation, jobs, water preservation, and biodiversity. And Ethiopia is committed to restore 22 million hectares of forest land by 2030. So it's a huge challenge, and which will need a lot of investment and work. But we've seen excellent progress by the government over the last few years in terms of the tree planting campaigns. And in January 2021 is the start of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So this is going to be a global opportunity to really put emphasis on funding and financing forest restoration in the world, especially in Africa. $1 million spent on forest restoration has also been estimated to create between 500 to 1,000 jobs. This is also what we need in Africa with and Ethiopia, with a large number of unemployed people. And if you compare this to the number of jobs that would be created through investing in energy, it's between 10 and 20 times greater. We also see conditional cash transfers, cash for work programs. These have been successful for forest restoration in China and Vietnam, India, and also Ethiopia has the safety net program. But at times of crisis, this also could be something that could be looked at, trying to not just put these recovery packages into things that are not useful, but to restore upland landscapes and pay for communities and farmers to restore landscapes and to look at soil erosion. The restoring forests for job creation can also be something relatively quick and give direct economic benefits to the poorest of the poor. We also see impact on agriculture and disrupted value chains. There's 265 million people on the brink of starvation, and this has doubled following the pandemic. This has also been exacerbated in East Africa through the terrible locust storms that you've had, and also globally can be exacerbated by climate pressure. We see water shortages, violence, and instability. So the disrupted value chains often leads to greater forest exploitation and forest degradation. So we do need to focus on food as well as jobs. So we need to have investments to restore food security and build resilient supply chains. Things like seeds, fertilizers, technologies, these are more difficult to import and for farmers to buy in the current crisis. There's new opportunities for things like solar powered irrigation to expand agriculture and to make sure it's more water efficient. And the safety net programs are the cash for work. And also many farmers and enterprises have been affected by a lack of investment opportunities and investment capital. I'm sure a number of companies are really struggling now in the current crisis to pay for workers or to import or export their products. So agricultural value chains have been disrupted enormously. So what is GDGI doing? Well, first of all, GDGI has targets which are compatible with the recovery. And so one of the aims is to create 2 million green jobs. This is largely from the sustainable landscape component, which I am working on. The aim is to leverage additional $16 billion by 2030 and to train 8 million people to adaptation to climate change. As I mentioned, I'm working on sustainable landscapes. I'm the head of this program, and it has 3 major components. One is to look at climate resilient agriculture. Secondly is sustainable forests. And thirdly is to build coastal resilience. And things that we're doing, well, one is many countries are spending large amounts of money on economic plans for green recovery. And GDGI is developing plans to support a large number of member countries. We are supporting economists to several countries in Africa as part of the NDC partnerships, and also supporting through our existing programs. I think that a lot of countries need to think how they will start spending the money and on what is the best for bang for the buck, as they say. This is a graph from a report done by Vivid Economics recently, where they are looking at the published COVID recovery packages, and they've looked at the activities which are the ones in green, which give a positive contribution to the environment and to green economy. And you'll see, for example, South Korea is doing very well with its package, the biggest for any of the countries actually. Germany, UK, France, and also the European Commission have recovery packages which have been regarded as positive for the environment. But there's also a lot of countries out there, Australia, Brazil, India, Russia, USA, where there's a negative contribution to green recovery. So I think that the countries should really be investing in taking the opportunity to build better and to build a green recovery. There's a link here you can check to find the report, which is very interesting. We're also been looking at proposals, so to help support the forest sector. So we have the COICA Climate Resilient Landscapes Program starting very soon, hopefully. It's hopefully been approved by COICA, as was mentioned by Mr. Dong Ho Kim. We also developed some proposals for African countries for conditional cash transfers for forest restoration. Some of these are being submitted to the EU, and we're waiting to hear whether they will be funded. And we also have a low emission development planning project, which has been submitted to the AFD, the French government, for looking at low emission development planning and bringing in economists to look at the long-term, how we will build on the CRGE and the next 2020 to 2030 plan, and how to mobilize investments for recovery. And in a country like Ethiopia, agriculture and forestry needs to be at the heart of any recovery. In the agriculture sector, we submitted a proposal for the Green Climate Fund to develop a national adaptation plan. This is going to be very important for the country with a lot of impacts on agriculture and forests in the future, especially related to water and temperature rise. And we've also been mobilizing projects to look at climate resilient agriculture and solar irrigation. And I think this is my final slide. One more. So what does the international donor finance community need to do? They need to pay attention to sustainable forest management, conservation and restoration of ecosystems to prevent disease, secure livelihoods, create jobs, and address climate change. So we are entering the decade of forest restoration and the decade of the Sustainable Development Goals, and nature-based solutions, sustainable agriculture and forest conservation must be at the heart of this. And we're hoping that working with our fellow colleagues in UNDP and the Environment Commission, we're hoping that we can try to make sure that donors and finance agencies take this as a priority. Sometimes donors often want to focus on quick wins, but if you only focus on quick wins, then you will not really achieve the ultimate goal of sustainable development in the country. And countries, governments like Ethiopia need to ensure also that forests is at the heart of sustainable development strategies as a solution. My final slide is a link to a report that GGI did on achieving green growth and climate action following post-COVID, and you can click on this link to find this report. And okay, so thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation.